The night air tasted of salt and storm rack as it swept across the black parapets of Dragonstone. Low thunder muttered far out at sea, no more than a growl beneath the deeper pulse of the waves. Daenerys Targaryen stood alone on the wind-flayed battlements. Silver blonde hair, unbound and streaming like a banner of its own accord. Eyes fixed on a horizon, illuminated only by the phosphor of distant lightning. The castle's ancient stone, sooted dark, pitted with the fury of forgotten eruptions, seemed less a fortress than the half-surface skull of some leviathan. Why her return? She felt the pulse of the place through the soles of her boots. Slow, seismic, patient, waiting. Behind her, scoria black doors shuddered open. Missandei's soft steps carried no echo, yet Daenerys felt them as a tremor across her skin. "My queen," Missandei whispered, drawing her cloak tighter against the wind. "The maesters say the squall will skirt us by dawn." She spoke Valyrian out of habit, a language whose syllables rode easier on the gale than the thicker consonants of the common tongue. Daenerys nodded but did not look away. Storms had become familiar companions these past weeks. Everyone an omen, everyone a reminder that Dragonstone's core still remembered fire. Missandei's gaze followed her queen's toward the obsidian dark sea, where flashes of pale, cold light unstitched the horizon. "He will not sleep," she said. And this time Daenerys knew she spoke of Drogon. The great beast had grown restless since they landed, wheeling above the keep at dusk, prowling the mountain caldera by night, fire leaking between his fangs in nervous embers. It was not hunger, it was a searching, an itch beneath the scales, as though the island itself whispered to him in a forgotten dialect. Daenerys inhaled the scent of oncoming rain, and the faint copper of her own blood, where the wind had cracked her lips. "I feel it too," she answered. "There is something beneath us, something that breathes when he breathes." She closed her eyes and saw again, behind the lids, the vision that haunted her sleeps. Pillars of basalt shaped like coiled dragons, their crystal eyes sealed by centuries of ash. Caves where heat lingered, though no flame touched them. A dream, yet more vivid than memory. "Come inside, Khaleesi," Missandei entreated, though without insistence. Grey Worm paces like a caged shadow. The Unsullied do not understand storms that are more than storms. Daenerys almost managed to smile. "Tell him to sharpen patience instead of spears. I will join you when Drogon lands." Lightning cracked overhead, closer now, so bright the sea shone like a mirror of hammered tin. For one heartbeat, the silhouette of her dragon surged against the sky. Wings spanning half the heavens, a shard of night darker than the night itself. He descended in a spiral that churned the very clouds, talons extended, claws screeching against the ridged stone tiles, before he folded his massive pinions with a groan of old leather. Fire smoked in his throat, and his yellow eyes fixed upon his rider. But there was more than greeting in them. There was command. Daenerys approached, unflinching as always, one hand raised. The heat rolling off him was near unbearable, yet comforting. "Show me," she murmured in high Valyrian. The dragon tilted his great head, nostrils flare snorting a plume that smelt of brimstone and bones, long charred. Then, without further warning, he leapt from the parapet, wings beating once, twice, scattering roof slates like startled gulls, and soared inland toward the mountain that birthed the fortress. Daenerys did not hesitate. She turned, cloak snapping, and strode for the spiral stair. Each step clanged like a call to arms. The Unsullied she passed in the courtyard brought fist to chest, but she offered neither acknowledgement nor pause. At the stables, she found no time for saddle or bridle. A single sway of her hand sent grooms scurrying as Rhaegal and Viserion rumbled in their pens. They smelled Drogon's agitation and answered with their own. A fortnight ago, she would have sought counsel, measured advice, a map, and torches. Tonight instinct ruled. In the marrow of her queenly bones lay the inarguable certainty that the stone of Dragonstone had stirred, that only dragonfire could speak its language, and that Drogon, firstborn, fiercest, must be allowed to answer. Inside, the volcano's throat, lay tunnels carved by fire rather than men, twisting arteries through which steam sighed like buried ghosts. Drogon lit on a narrow ledge halfway down the caldera. Smoke trailed from vents in the walls, forming whorls that coiled around him in serpentine reverence. He waited there, utterly still, except for the tremor of muscle beneath obsidian scales. Daenerys dismounted along his shoulder ridge and dropped onto stone that quivered. Yes, quivered. Underfoot, as though living tissue lay scarcely hidden beneath a brittle crust. The crimson in her blood answered the pulse. She pressed her palm flat to the basalt and felt a beat, slow and ancient. A dragon's heart, slowed by centuries of slumber. Drogon's head dipped close. Her reflection burned in the mirror of his eye. A woman crowned by shadow, ringed by flame. Another heartbeat passed before the ground split. Not violently, no earthquake convulsed, no cataclysm burst. Instead, it opened like lips parting for breath. A seam traced itself in glowing orange along the floor, spiraling outward, etching scales as large as sailcloth across what she had thought mere stone. Heat rushed upward, sulfur stung her lungs. Drogon's wings flared, but he did not flee. He roared, a sound that cracked rock and thought alike, bathing the emerging pattern in a lance of fire so white it left afteridges dancing on Daenerys' vision. Stone drank that flame, veins of molten gold. No liquid dragon glass, threaded outward, filling grooves older than the first men. The spiral resolved into a vast sleeping head. Horned, jawline ridged with mineralized teeth, eyes like sealed geodes. One by one those eyes ignited, twin suns behind crystal lids. Then lids split open, and the cave brightened with a radiance unfurling from the inside out. Daenerys could not breathe. She was seeing impossible legend made incarnate. A stone dragon, wrought by Valyrian architects in the dawn of days, meant only as decoration by the reckoning of maesters. Yet it lived, sinews of obsidian flexing beneath a hide that cracked along ancient fault lines to reveal magma for blood. Scales lifted with groans like glaciers shifting. A second head surged beyond, and a third. They rose from the floor and from the walls, shedding centuries of shale and salt like cloaks tossed aside. Drogon watched, neither dominant nor submissive, but kin greeting kin. Though newly wakened, these colossi dwarfed him. Their necks could bridge the span between Dragonstone and the mainland in a single sinuous arc. Yet they regarded her, not him, with eyes of smelted quartz. And Daenerys Targaryen felt something in her soul flare with answering heat. Speech faltered in her throat. She offered the only language that felt worthy. Flame. With a whispered word, she summoned the breath of her bloodline and exhaled, unafraid, though her lungs held no fire. Drogon understood her intent. He projected a smaller jet, measured, almost cautious, across her slender form, wreathing her in a sheath of living heat that did not scorch. The colossal heads bent nearer, inhaling her scent through vents that hissed like escaping steam. They seemed not to smell flesh, but memory, the echo of Aegon's dream, the doom of Valyria, the broken chains of Slaver's Bay. The first stone dragon spoke. Its voice was the grinding of tectonic plates, but Daenerys heard words inside her mind, not spoken, but realized in the marrow. Blood of the conqueror, it murmured. Why have you come? She swallowed embers. To free the world, she answered, though doubt flickered. To break wheels forged of iron and fear. Wheels, the second dragon rumbled. Kings spoke of wheels at the height of their pride. Wheels roll, yes, until stone stops them. Laughter like rockfall followed. The third eye narrowed. Stone is patient, it said. Stone remembers. We were carved to sleep until our master returned with living fire. Your fire woke us. Yet your flesh is fragile. Will you shatter like pottery when your purpose meets stone? No more. Daenerys stepped closer, though heat licked sweat down her spine. I am dragon, she said simply. I was born of storm and salt, fire and blood. Fragility is for those who believe they may be broken. I do not. The first dragon exhaled. The air shimmered. You claim the title, it mused. But title is breath in winter. We require proof. At that, Drogon roared again. wings flinging sparks against the cavern's ceiling in defiance. But Daenerys gestured once, and he subsided, though tremors rippled his neck. "What proof?" she asked. "Endurance. Resolve. Mercy measured where mercy seems foolish," the third intoned. "Stone has no mercy. Yet even stone remembers the shape of rivers." And then the mountain beneath Dragonstone convulsed in earnest. Tunnels collapsed behind her. Vents erupted jets of flame so hot they turned steam to shards of glass in the air. The ledge split, dropping into an abyss of molten glow. Drogon seized his rider, claws gentle despite their scythe-sharp edges, and climbed skyward through a throat of sulphurous fume. Behind them, rumbling echo chased like distant drums, yet Daenerys felt not fear but exhilaration so pure it verged on delirium. She had woken more than stone. She had roused an epoch. They burst from the caldera into a night shredded by lightning. Rain slashed sideways, hissing where it struck Drogon's scales. From the crater mouth rose a column of radiance, magma spires twisting around each other like twin serpents, bearing upward the nascent forms of the stone leviathans. They shed cinders that hardened mid-flight into shards of obsidian. These tinkled down upon the castle roofs in a hushed storm of black snow. Bells tolled terror below. Unsullied stood beneath raised shields. Dothraki horses reared, sailors fled along the docks. Yet across that chaos strode Tyrion Lannister, soaked to the bone, blinking rain from his mismatched eyes. He stared upward at the impossible spectacle, mouth peeled into something between awe and horror. "Another of your miracles, my queen?" he muttered to no one but the gods. Daenerys circled high, Drogon's wing beats muffling the storm's growl. The stone dragon's wings beat more slowly, for they were young in movement though older than living memory. With each massive pump they expelled furnaces of heat that caused rain clouds to evaporate in soundless blossoms of steam, creating clear lanes of sky through which starlight spilled like spilled jewels. An ancient terror seized the island folk who dared glance skyward. Some knelt, some fled, some simply wept. Yet Daenerys saw in their faces not only fear but recognition. They knew, on a level deeper than speech, that histories carved into children's toys had roused into towering reality. She guided Drogon lower, alighting beside Tyrion at the edge of the courtyard. Soldiers scattered from the sudden wash of heat. She swung down, boots touching puddled flagstone. Rain hissed on her shoulders. "Prepare the keep," she said, voice steady. "The mountain may wake fully." Tyrion managed a wry nod, though his eyes never left the huge silhouettes halting above the crater, like three moons captured in a snare of rock and fire. "Shall I put out extra cups for unexpected guests?" he quipped, yet his jest trembled. A fresh concussion rolled out from the mountain, and the earth underfoot lifted, then settled again in slow waves. Cracks spidered across courtyard pavers. Crimson light glowed from below, as though the castle floated upon a glass floor and someone had lit torches beneath. Grey Worm approached, visage hard as the spear he bore. "My queen, unsullied await command. Should we form shield wall? Evacuate small folk to caves on the eastern beach." His discipline allowed no mention that caves might not outlast a volcano's wrath. Daenerys weighed options amid thunder, feeling the new dragon's regard on her back, like the warmth of a sun not yet risen. "No," she said. "No caves. Bunkers below sea level could flood with boiling water if vents opened beneath them." Her mind raced with unaccustomed calculations. Lava channels, pressure release, structural integrity of a fortress sculpted from hardened magma. Clear the outer wards. Collapse drawbridges to the sea and take ships to deeper water. Tell the Dothraki to ready every horse, but not to ride until dawn. The ground may crack again. Wow. Grey Worm saluted and vanished into rain with steps that did not falter, even when the next tremor loosened stones overhead. Tyrion's cloak whipped about his knees. "You control them?" he asked, chin tipping toward the hovering titans. "Or they control you?" "We converse," she answered, which was truth. Drogon huffed beside her, arching his neck to watch the skyborn colossi with challenge and curiosity mingled. They were wrought to guard something deeper even than Dragonstow's vaults. Perhaps secrets, perhaps sleeping enemies, or perhaps simply the memory of Valeria's first breath. Nemsh. And now they're awake. Tyrion raised brows. Will they care that the Iron Throne still exists, or will they melt the land to glass in the name of ancient grievances? Neither, Daenerys said, though certainty wavered at her core. They seek purpose like any living thing. If I gift them one worthy, they will not need to create their own through destruction. She saw doubt flicker in the Lannister's eyes. He masked it with a wet chuckle. A noble gamble, he murmured. I pray the stakes aren't the Seven Kingdoms. Lightning strobed again, silhouettes of 3 colossal tails coiling through vapor. For a breath, they seemed almost graceful, less monsters than gods, carving calligraphy across the cloud parchment. In the hours that followed, the storm broke and fled east, cowed by forces older than weather. The new dragons settled upon the slopes of the mountain, folding wings like fortress walls, eyes dimming to smoldering embers. Their bodies cooled until stone crusted again over glowing joints, but they did not sleep. Their minds were lamplight behind thick glass, watchful. Daenerys paced the length of the council chamber, while water dripped from her hair, sporing dark petals on the floor. Varys hovered ghost-like near the hearth, drying his hands. Ser Davos yo-yoed between windows, squinting at the horizon as though ships might materialize bearing either allies or doom. We cannot sit this out, the Onion Knight rasped at last. King's Landing will see the fires and send ravens by morning. Queen Cersei will call it sorcery, a Targaryen threat reborn. Armies march on rumor alone. Then bow and re. She will march on fear. Varys corrected softly. Fear is quicker than rumor. Tyrion's voice cut through. Then we must manage both. Rumor first. Let them spread that these dragons are bound to Daenerys' will, but hold no rage for humankind. Fear we cannot prevent, but we can redirect. He looked to his queen for affirmation. Daenerys paused before the old carved table of Westeros, the glimmering stone map whose rivers and ridges mimicked the very geology now reshaping outside. I will not hold them in chains, she said. But neither will I unleash them. We shall learn one another. She traced a finger along the painted spine of the King's Road. And in learning, those who cling to thrones of rusted iron will tremble at possibilities, rather than certain ruin. Fear of guesswork is less potent than fear of flame. Davos grunted. Tell that to small folk in the fields. They've known fire enough without having to guess whether sky itself might fall. Daenerys halted, gaze softening. She saw not his weathered face, but the echo of fields she had burned in a war too young to judge its own scars. I will not be the tyrant they expect, she whispered. Silence answered. Outside, one of the stone dragons shifted, causing dust to rain from vaulted ceilings. Drogon growled low in reply, a sound more affectionate than hostile, as though greeting an elder. When pale dawn crept beneath ragged clouds, Dragonstone still stood, though its battlements steamed and its courtyards glimmered with obsidian shards. Workers moved like ants amid broken masonry, carting rubble before heat seared their palms. Daenerys stood upon the high stairs, flanked by unsullied banners. She spoke to the gathered throng, a mix of soldiers, fishermen, freed slaves come north to join her cause. Her voice carried in the hush. She told them of destiny, of dragons who would not conquer but protect, of a broken world that could yet know justice under wings that once knew only war. She did not promise ease. She promised meaning. Many believed. Some did not. All listened. Beneath that first fragile sunrise, the stone colossi crouched unmoving, like mountains tipped with horns. Their shadows sprawled across the sea, and the tide brought them tribute, flotsam, slain fish, fragments of wrecked reefs. In those shadows dragons old and new measured each other, and within Daenerys' heart the ember of a bolder dream took root. If the past itself could be stirred from stone, then perhaps the future could be molded in kind. Slow, deliberate, enduring beyond the brief blaze of mortal rains. But stone proves mercy only with time, and time, like fire, is ever hungry. Beneath Dragonstone, Deeper still than the caverns where obsidian bled, lay chambers yet unopened. Within those lightless hollows slept things older than even the stone dragons, sigils etched in runes that predated the Valerian freehold. Chambers where the heartbeat Daenerys felt had never once stuttered in millennia. Walls of fused glass sealed something that pulsed like an ember caught in a bell jar. And as rainwater percolated through cracks above, hissing on molten veins, that pulse grew fractionally swifter, as if sensing the daylight now streaming through tunnels clogged for ages. Elsewhere, ravens beat ragged paths toward every corner of the realm. In the Red Keep, Cersei Lannister would unroll scrolls written in shaking scripts that spoke of stone dragons sprouting from a smoking mountain. In Winterfell, Sansa Stark would ponder letters heavy with wax but heavier with portents. Across the narrow sea, in the banks of Bravos, faceless clerks would calculate interest on wars not yet declared. And in the citadel at Old Town, archmaesters would dust off tomes they once shelved as curiosities. Theorems on lithic vitalism, on the breath of stone, and older still the weeping mountain speaks. Yet all their fears, all their plots, even the unfolding awe of Daenerys' own camp, remained but whispers beside the cosmic hush, inside the first waking colossus. It listened to surf, to wind, to the small insect hum of humanity, and judged none of it worthy or unworthy. Life was simply motion through time, and motion required direction. Daenerys Targaryen had given it a beginning. Whether that beginning ended in a bloom of new empires, or in the vitrified ruin of continents, lay upon paths not yet walked. By dusk the sky bled rose gold through rents in broken clouds. Workers lit braziers where stone had cooled enough to stand. Daenerys climbed the mountain again, this time accompanied by no one but Drogon. The passage where she had first felt the heart's pulse now opened into a molten amphitheater, ringed by the coiled bodies of her newfound guardians. They bowed their heads as she entered, a gesture as slow and ponderous as tectonic drift. She walked to the central dais where magma seeped in glowing rivulets across engraved floor tiles. There, in shimmering reflections, she saw herself multiplied, a dozen Daeneryses, each ghost flickering in the heat haze. It struck her then. She had reshaped the world more each day, yet scarcely reigned her own reflection. Sovereigns might control armies, gods controlled the very shape of belief. Which was she to become? She knelt, setting both palms flat upon the searing stone. Pain lanced through flesh. She did not withdraw. Blood sizzled in sizzling steam between her fingers. Above, the stone dragons watched, patient. Drogon coiled behind her, shading her with a wing, yet his shadow did not mute the glow beneath her hands. She spoke not aloud, but in thought so fierce it bent muscle to iron. I will forge myself here, where fire births stone and stone shelters fire. I am to lead dragons of marrow and dragons of mountain alike. I must be tempered as both. Heat climbed through her arms, into her chest, spreading each heartbeat into a drumstroke of scorching clarity. She saw again the wheel, the one she vowed to break, spinning, spokes of gold and iron and bone, grinding innocence to dust. She saw her path to it, through politics, through mercy, through vengeance. Each route glimmered uncertain, but beneath all routes lay fire. Queens who would change worlds must decide what they will burn and what they will spare. At last she rose, palms blistered yet already healing in the fevered air. The largest dragon inclined its head until its snout lay level with her chest. In its gemlit eyes, she glimpsed the reflection of a horizon aflame. I name you Garxian, she said, tasting the word. High Valyrian for foundation flame. She turned to the second. You, Thraelis, stone that sings. To the third. And you, Lomarax, memory bound by ash. Their breaths emerged in unison, a long sigh that fluttered her hair like a veil. She sensed acceptance, not servitude, not even alliance, but acknowledgement. 3 continents of will intersecting at a single point in time. Behind her, Drogon chuffed in faintly jealous approval. She touched his muzzle. You are first, she whispered, and forever. Night deepened. Above the crater, the dragon's silhouettes blended with the jagged crown of the mountain, so that travelers at sea saw only a single titanic fortress crowned in living flame. Some would mistake it for Dragonstone aflame. Others would say the island had grown taller overnight. In the bowels of the keep, Tyrion penned letters by candlelight, drafting words to soothe allies and confound foes. Varys dispatched little birds whose wings bore secrets faster than ravens. Grey Worm drilled unsullied on lava-cooled courts, whose cracks traced maps of unknown lands. And in every hushed corridor, the small folk whispered a single theme. The world is changing. The mother of dragons has woken stone. What wakes next? As the second moon set and dawn yet slept, Daenerys climbed to the highest spire to watch the sea. Wind braided her hair around her throat like chains she could remove at will. Beneath her feet, the castle vibrated. A purr too low for ears, felt only in bone. The world awaited her next breath. She drew it. Salt, smoke, promise, and exhaled into the dark. Far below, magma vines pulsed in answer, tracing a glowing sigil of a three-headed dragon beneath the waves. She smiled, not in triumph but in dawning understanding. Stone dragons might sleep, but she would not. Yet even queens cannot watch every horizon at once. Beyond sight of Dragonstone's rocky teeth, currents shifted. From the frozen north to the deserts of Dorne, ancient powers sensed imbalance. Some stirred in crypts, others in crowns, and a few in places that had never known sunlight. All difference between legend and history blurred like ink spread with water. Still, in that elusive moment before the sun burst again above the sea, Daenerys believed in possibility unshadowed by fear. She believed the stone dragons would guard without slaughter, that mortal hearts might adapt quicker than bones turned glass. And so, as first light crowned the world in fragile gold, she whispered a vow the wind carried straight into the embers of the mountain. Let stone learn mercy. Let fire learn patience. Let the mother of dragons earn her name anew, not by the ashes she leaves, but by the lives that rise unburnt beside her. The mountain heard. Stone ears remembered. Beneath its crust, the deeper pulse steadied, slow as the turning of ages, and, for the first time in remembered history, it beat in time with a human heart. Kshay Ka. Tyrion Lannister slept hardly at all that night. He dozed in the velvet-draped chair behind the great study window, every half-dream shattered by the rumble of the three colossi settling their bulk against the mountain's ribs. Just before dawn, he yielded to wakefulness and sought quills and parchment, his mind juggling a dozen distinct dangers like knives, balanced by a juggler with trembling wrists. But ink would not obey him. Words flowed only in fragments. Threat, alliance, fear of fire, before dissolving in black blotches beneath his palm. At length, he surrendered the parchment to the hearth. Long shadows reached across the basalt floor as sunrise failed to warm the keep. The mountain's own heat unnerved every hearth and brazier. Flames guttered low, drawing back as though they sensed a second, greater master of fire. Tyrion wrapped an ermine-lined cloak about his shoulders and stepped into the corridor. Unsullied, stood rigid at each archway, eyes fixed straight ahead, yet he could feel their pulses quicken when the distant echo of Garxian's exhalation tremored through the walls. Grey Worm emerged from a side passage, helm under one arm. He inclined his head in silent greeting. Beads of sweat traced the planes of his cheeks despite the hour's chill. Tyrion matched his stride as they headed toward the yard. The men slept on their feet, Grey Worm said without preamble. Some offered prayer to gods of fire for protection. Others fear the gods sent punishment. Men, Sai. Men always choose one of those two interpretations, Tyrion answered dryly. Never the more likely possibility, that gods simply do not care. Grey Worm's brown eyes flicked sideways. If gods do not care, dragons must. A brittle laugh escaped Tyrion. How fortunate then that we have dragons in abundance. The trick is convincing them to concern themselves with the fragile things of men. They passed beneath an archway open to dawn. The courtyard bustled despite exhaustion. stable hands harnessing skittish destriers for the Dothraki, who insisted on scouting the coastline, masons hammering new braces into walls to forestall collapse should the mountain shift again. 100 miniature crises vied for attention, each one overshadowed by the looming shapes perched above, their outlines visible even through the thickest mist. Thraelis lay coiled across a ridge of obsidian like a dark river frozen mid-torrent. Garxian had folded his wings into broad buttresses, tail hanging down a ravine where cooled lava glimmered like broken glass. Lomirax crouched beside the caldera mouth, peering into its glow as though ruminating on some long-forgotten memory. A gust of steam burst from a fissure, swirling low before dissipating. Tyrion began to cough. Sharp sulfur stung his lungs. Grey Worm produced a damp cloth, offered it wordlessly. Tyrion nodded thanks and pressed the makeshift veil across his mouth and nose. "Any word from the Queen?" he asked between shallow breaths. Her Grace remained inside the mountain through most of the night, Grey Worm replied. "Drogon guards the entrance. She commanded no one follow until summoned." "No one?" Tyrion arched a brow. "I wonder whether stone chambers obey stricter orders than human hearts." Grey Worm's gaze did not waver. "Her Grace trusts you, Lord Hand. That remains unchanged." The dwarf sniffed at that. "Trust is a coin easily melted in high heat, my friend. Let us hope mine is forged of good metal." Nundarben. A sudden screech split the air. Regal and Viserion sparring above the eastern towers, green and cream wings slapping as they wrestled for aerial dominance. Their roars sent gales of wind against ramparts already cracked. Tiles rained down upon unsullied helmets. Tyrion winced. "If any of us survive, masons will earn a fortune," he muttered. A horn blast rippled from the seaward curtain wall. Grey Worm stiffened at once. "Signal from the bay," he said, and pivoted toward the stairs. Tyrion followed, limping slightly. The old wound from the Blackwater still complained in damp weather. They climbed to a parapet where a watchman lowered his horn. "Sails on the horizon," the man reported. "2 galleasses flying Baratheon stag and Arryn falcon both." He squinted into a spyglass. "More behind. Mercenaries by the rigging." Tyrion took the glass and braced elbows on cracked merlons. Out at the edge of shimmering dawnlight, hulls advanced in a cautious line, oars dipping with measured discipline. The standards were unmistakable, black on gold, white on sky blue. He blew out a tense breath. "The lords of the Stormlands and the Vale come courting," he said. "Faster than I predicted. Perhaps they fear Queen Cersei," Grey Worm suggested. Tyrion lowered the glass. "They fear relevance. Wars end quickly when one side holds 4 dragons and 3 of them can blot the sun." He handed back the glass. "Send a skiff under parley flag. Invite the highborn envoys within the outer harbor. No nearer. Make clear the Queen is indisposed, but her hand will receive them. And warn them of volcanic temperament, both the mountains and mine." "They." Grey Worm nodded and departed at once, swift as strike. Tyrion lingered a moment longer, mind whirring through potential allegiances, bribes, threats. A faint tremor coursed beneath his boots. He imagined the stone beneath Dragonstone adjusting like a dragon stretching after eons dormant. "Please," he whispered to the horizon. "Let them bring reason with their spears." The sea answered with a forlorn gull cry. South of there in King's Landing, Queen Cersei Lannister did not sleep at all. When news of stone dragons reached the Red Keep by Swift Raven, she ordered the small council roused into the throne room while the moon still stood high. One by one they arrived, ashen-faced. Qyburn bowed low, scroll clutched in skeletal hands. Sir Gregor loomed silent behind him like an iron tomb. Cersei sat upon the iron throne, posture carved of rage and exhaustion. Her golden hair, clipped shorter since the shame walk, now framed eyes rimmed red from sleepless nights. Jaime stood below her on the steps, newly returned from the Riverlands. Mud still caked his boots. He glanced up only once before fixing his gaze on the cold marble floor. "These reports." Cersei's voice cut the hush. "Read them." Qyburn obeyed, the parchment trembling faintly. "Witnesses at Driftmark, Your Grace, claim to have seen 3 colossal dragons of stone rising from Dragonstone's volcano. They..." They describe them as larger than castles, and yet they fly. Cersei's lip curled. Stone does not fly. The ravens insist they glided more than flew, supported by heat rising from the mountain. Qyburn swallowed. The accounts may be exaggerations born of panic, but every witness agrees they exist. Manwin, Teco Nestoris, representative of the Iron Bank, cleared his throat from where he stood off to one side. Panic has a habit of traveling faster than ships, he said, voice mild. Loans become uncertain when ash clouds loom over trade routes. Cersei's stare skewered him. Your gold will remain safe so long as the crown remains. She rose, descending the steps with slow precision, until she stood before Jaime. Brother, you have fought dragons before. Tell me, can stone burn? Jaime's jaw flexed. Stone can break walls as surely as flame, he answered. And if these behemoths breathe fire like their living kin. He hesitated. King's Landing would not withstand 3 Drogons, sister. Then we will not meet them here. Cersei turned to the map stretched across the floor. The same map Daenerys had once paced when plotting conquest. With a sweep of her hand she scattered carved lions and stags that had marked troop positions. We will take the fight to Dragonstone again, break them before they breed terror. She fixed Qyburn with flinty eyes. How fares your scorpion? Qyburn's smile was slight, hungry, improved. Stronger sinews, heavier bolt. We test a compound of wildfire lining the tips. Triple your production, she commanded. Every city within a fortnight's march shall forge them. She rounded on Jaime. Summon Lord Randall Tarley's levies, all he can muster. We sail the Blackwater within 3 days, and bring Euron Greyjoy his due. Tell him the Queen will honor their pact if he brings his fleet to Dragonstone's shore. Jaime's voice, low. If Euron sails, who guards the capital? Cersei smiled a smile of frost. Fear will guard us, and fear obeys whoever rides victory last. She cast her gaze over the council. Nervous lords, scheming merchants, silent killers. Go, she hissed, and the lords scattered like pigeons from a hawk's shadow. Jaime lingered. Beneath the blaze of torches, his golden hand glinted blank as a mirror. Cersei approached and placed fingertips upon the cold metal. You doubt me, she said. I fear for you, he replied. For all of us. Her nails traced the seam where steel met stump. Fear sharpens the blade. She pressed a kiss to his temple as though in farewell. We have survived Tyrion's betrayal's father's corpse, the Walk of Atonement. Stone dragons are but another myth to slay. Jaime caught her wrist gently. Some myths bite. She freed herself, retreating up the steps. Then let them taste lion's blood. Hours later, in the high rookery of Winterfell, Sansa Stark unfurled a scroll bearing the wax seal of Dragonstone. Bran Stark, the three-eyed raven now more than brother, stared into the hearth flames, mind drifting beyond stone walls. Arya leaned in the window alcove, sharpening needle in slow strokes. They woke what? Arya asked when Sansa finished reading, disbelief flickering beneath calm. Stone dragons, Sansa repeated, eyes distant. Creatures larger than any living dragon. Sworn now, it seems, to Daenerys' cause. She rubbed the bridge of her nose. And Lord Glover's scouts report Lannister forces mustering in the Crownlands. Bran stirred, his voice hollow. The world cracks wider each season. Old powers rise, new ones wither. All threads pull toward a knot tight as a noose. Arya sheathed her sword. Cersei moves. Daenerys counters. That is their war, not ours. Nally. Sansa shook her head. Every war becomes ours eventually. Winterfell cannot stand aloof if stone monsters churn the seas red. We must decide soon where we bend. She looked to Bran. What do you see? Pale eyes blinked once, twice. I see a mountain that once was a beast. Bran murmured, voice echoing. I see wings of stone beating smoke into storms. I see a queen kneeling over molten veins, binding herself to fire deep as the world's heart. And I see a lioness drinking wildfire from a broken cup. Sansa sifted that for meaning. You see ruin. Bran shrugged, the gesture somehow older than time. Ruin births futures as surely as triumph. Arya pushed off from the wall. Then we must choose the ruin that favors the north. She paced. Jon followed Daenerys south, trusting her dragons. If she now commands 3 more, her promise to shield the living from the dead becomes easier kept. The dead? Sansa raised her brows. We defeated the Night King more than a year past. The dead never rest, sister, Bran said quietly, unsettling them both. Not all of them. He closed lids over White and Winter. But choose you must. A raven departs for Dragonstone by dusk or flies south to Cersei. The wind will not wait. Sansa exhaled slowly. Very well. We will write Daenerys. An offer of mutual defense contingent on her new guardians not stepping 1 talon north of Moat Cailin without invitation. And a warning, should these stone dragons bring destruction, the north will answer in kind. Arya grinned, fierce. Dragons or no, a dagger in the dark still kills. Sansa allowed herself a small smile in return. Let us hope it need not come to that. Meanwhile, far beneath Dragonstone, Daenerys walked alone deeper into chambers, whose walls gleamed like obsidian mirrors. Every 6th breath, a pulse thrummed through stone at her feet. Slow, immense, patient. She carried no torch. Magma veins traced enough light to reveal carvings older than Valyria. Spirals within spirals, concentric dragons devouring their own tails, runes shaped like talons, and wings. She traced one glyph. Heat tingled the whorls of her fingertips. A memory rose from childhood, a lullaby her brother Viserys once sang while they huddled in a leaky hovel of Bravos. In the shadow of the mountain the sleepers lie waiting for blood and flame and sky. Viserys had called it nonsense, a superstition. Yet here she stood, a living answer to its promise. She reached a cavernous rotunda whose dome shimmered with rivers of glass solidified mid-drip. In the center lay a pedestal hammered from fused dragon bone adi. Upon it rested a sphere, the size of a war helm. Coal black, veined with crimson lines that pulsed faintly like veins beneath skin. She felt its call like a hand upon her sternum. Breath trembled. Slowly she extended both palms and cradled the sphere. It weighed scarcely anything, as though buoyed by its own heat. Images stabbed her mind, oceans boiling, continents rended by firestorms, dragons screaming across skies black with ash. Yet beneath terror lay clarity. The sphere was not mere artifact. It was Heartstone, a core fragment of the mountain's original eruption, a seed of living flame around which stone dragons had crystallized. A whisper, soft as ash on wind, coiled in her thoughts. Mother of dragons, mother of stone, will you bear the burden of worlds unborn? She steadied her mind, replying without words. I will bear whatever I must, so my people need not. Heat seared her palms. She did not flinch. The crimson veins brightened, spidering across the sphere, until it glowed like a captured sun. Threads of light leapt from it, searing glyphs into stone walls in patterns more complex than any maester's sigil. She watched, awestruck, as a map took shape, a relief of Westeros and Essos combined, overlaid by 3 serpentine orbits crossing at Dragonstone. At the nodes where orbits met, tiny sparks ignited and drifted upward like lanterns. She realized then, the sphere projected a star map, not of heavens but of ley lines buried beneath continents, currents of geothermal power that dragons, stone or flesh, could ride as effortlessly as gulls upon a breeze. Valyrians had harnessed such forces to birth their empire. If she could master them anew, she could move armies and heal lands, yet also raise cities with volcanic fury. Choice lay before her, terrible and vast. Behind, soft claws tapped basalt. She turned to see Drogon lowered to squeeze through an arch too narrow for any other creature his size. Magma's glow danced across his scales like living rubies. He blinked, then chuffed, nostrils flaring at the sphere's heat. She smiled. This Heartstone belongs to more than me, she murmured. It belongs to all dragonkind. She lifted the orb, its veins pulsed with her heartbeat. Drogon lowered his head in solemn acceptance. She set the sphere at the base of his neck, between the ridged spines. It adhered, embedding halfway as though sinking into molten wax. Crimson filaments spread along Drogon's scales like lightning branching through clouds, joining his own natural fire. He shuddered, wings trembling, yet made no protest. A deep hum resonated through the cavern. Far above, Garxian, Thryales, and Lomarax lifted their heads in unison. Their eyes brightened anew, and a note like distant horns quivered the mountain. Mother died. The thought was not words, but sense layered upon sense. Pride, gratitude, fierce determination. Daenerys placed a hand against Drogon's cheek. "We are one flight now," she said softly. "Stone and flesh, past and future." She inhaled, steadying. "We must fly." They emerged hours later into wild sky. Afternoon sun glared off ocean's swell, painting a trail of silver eastward. On the docks below, Dothraki scattered like startled crows as Drogon thundered overhead. Garxian lumbered down the slope, wings unfurling, each membrane translucent over magma-lit veins. Steam plumed between Thralis plates as the stone dragon launched skyward on updrafts. The air vibrated with the colossal beat, a cadence that rattled every rib within Daenerys' chest, yet filled her with exultation. They flew past the harbor breakwater, where the Baratheon and Arryn galleys waited under parley flag. Sailors shrank in terror as shadows swallowed decks. Daenerys guided Drogon low, allowing envoys a glimpse, but no closer than awe. Above, the stone dragons formed an escort, titans gliding in precise triangles, each movement stirring air currents felt for leagues. She directed Drogon out to open sea, deeper, until Dragonstone dwindled to a black claw on the horizon. There she hovered amidst her new kin, suspended on wings and will. Gull cries drifted from below. Sunlight glanced off wave crests like shattered mirrors. In that liminal space she spoke without speech, mind touch reaching to each dragon, large and small. "Guardians," she told them, "not conquerors. The fire we cradle must mend as well as burn." Her words wove into their consciousness concepts of mercy, justice, hope. She felt them weigh those notions against millennia of silence. At last acceptance pulsed back, conditional, cautious, yet real. When Daenerys turned back toward Dragonstone, she glimpsed sails near the mouth of Blackwater Bay. Gray krakens of the Iron Fleet sliding through mist like knives through oil. Euron Greyjoy moved quicker than rumor. And if Euron was near, Cersei was behind him with wildfire and scorpions primed to pierce sky. She guided the flight landward, heart thrumming with urgency. Tyrion awaited on the quay when they returned, squinting up with both fear and relief. The envoys had been escorted to guest quarters, but news of Euron's approach marred any diplomatic progress. He strode forward as Drogon landed, the sphere glowing faintly where it nested in scale and sinew. Tyrion's eyes widened. "Either my wine-soaked nightmares grow theatrical," he said, "or your dragon appears to have swallowed a comet." "A gift from the mountain," Daenerys replied, sliding down his shoulder. She placed a steadying hand on Tyrion's arm. "How many ships?" 24 ironborn longships, 6 galleys marked Lannister red, and word of transports behind them. "Lord Tarly's foot likely marches south by King's Road." Tyrion's face tightened. "Cersei means to strike before your new allies solidify." Daenerys scanned the horizon. Lava scent lingered on the wind. "Then we meet her once, decisively, and end this before more flames catch." She started toward the castle, cloak billowing. Tyrion hurried beside her. One decisive battle can become a lifetime of insurgency, if won with terror. He lowered his voice. "We must show mercy, Dany, even to lions." She halted, eyes flashing. "Mercy bought my father the name Mad when he spared too many lords who later betrayed him." Her gaze softened marginally. "But I will try. I promise no city will burn who raises no sword." She moved on. Inside the council chamber, envoys awaited. Lady Lyanna of House Baratheon's lesser branch, tall and angular. Sir Denys Arryn, cousin to little Lord Robin. They bowed stiffly. Fear still shimmered beneath courtesy. Daenerys offered wine and heard their pledges of conditional support. Storm's End would lend ships if King's Landing pressed dragons to war. The Vale might grant pikemen if the Queen guaranteed their safety. She promised what she could: trade rights, defense pacts, the honor of rebuilding a realm freed from tyrants. They departed to draft treaties before sunset. Evening darkened the Sea of Dorne beyond sight. Yet Euron's fleet crawled ever closer like beetles on steel. Flaming beacons lit Dragonstone's shoreline, unsullied lined ramparts, spears reflecting beacon flare. Dothraki sang Wardirgus low, steel scimitars flashing as they braided hair for trophies not yet taken. Within the courtyard, smiths angled scorpions toward the sky, though none believed them sufficient to wound stone. Daenerys gathered her commanders: Tyrion, Grey Worm, Sir Davos, Missandei. They met beneath the weeping gargoyles of the North Tower, the air thick with salt and anticipation. Mapstones lay across the table. Candles fluttered in restless wind. "We strike their fleet at dawn," Daenerys said. "Drogon and I will breach the vanguard, scatter their line. Rhaegal and Viserion will hold flanks. Dothraki outriders launch from the beach once the line breaks." She pointed at the sphere-set glyph on the map, marking volcanic vents beneath the bay. "But Garxion, Thryales, and Lumirax shall remain above Dragonstone, intercept any scorpion barges aimed at the castle." Sir Davos rubbed his beard. "Sailing men in wooden tubs against giants of living rock, that's murder, milady." His voice softened. "Some of them are good lads dragged to war by lordly foolishness." "I know." The Queen's eyes glimmered with empathy and steel. "Tyrion has scribed messages to be fired aboard their decks offering surrender. We will spare those who lay down arms. But Euron will not, nor Cersei." Resolve hardened her tone. "If they force my hand, I will not shy." Missandei placed gentle fingers upon the map's edge. "Your words echo the Stormborn within you, Khaleesi. Yet remember, every child of Westeros now looks skyward with new dread. Give them reason to look with hope." Daenerys inhaled. "Hope is tomorrow's burden. Tonight, we survive." They dispersed to tasks. Tyrion lingered. "The Heartstone, it gave you power." "Perhaps." She looked past him to the glow emanating from the corridor where the sphere had lodged against Drogon. It aligned dragons of stone and flesh, forging a bond beyond reigns. But power alone cannot win hearts. "Na Kampi." He touched her elbow. "Then let a dwarf remind a dragon queen. Hearts may be won not in victory, but in how we mourn the defeated." He offered a wan smile. "Promise me you'll try." She met his gaze, nodded once. "I promise." Moonless night cloaked the world. Fires winked on enemy masts in the far distance. Muted drums carried over water. Daenerys stood upon the highest parapet, alone save for Drogon perched behind. Below, the stone dragons rumbled low, a bass note of ancient hunger. She spread arms, feeling wind whip against palms, still scarred from the Heartstone's heat. Her cloak snapped open like wings, and for an instant she felt herself beyond flesh. A spark born upon cosmic gyres, the sphere had shown her, threads of molten power stitched beneath land and sea. She whispered into night, "I will be more than conqueror. I will be guardian." The vow vanished into waves. Dawn crept. War drums quickened on both shores. Dothraki mounted, blades catching amber light. Unsullied formed phalanxes at cliff paths. And aboard the Iron Fleet, Euron Greyjoy laughed beneath a sky still bruised with stars, brandishing a barbed harpoon coated in wildfire pitch. "Hear that, lads," he roared to his Ironborn. "Stone monsters shitting gems on Dragonstone's peak will carve their hearts for figureheads." He spat into surf. "And then I'll mount the Silver Queen's crown on my cock." Cersei's crimson banners flapped behind his prow. But Euron's smile cared little for thrones. He adored chaos above coin. The first Scorpion cruise, loaded bolts tipped with green glass and iron. War horns blared. Oars bit. Back on Dragonstone, Tyrion clasped a scroll in trembling fingers. Sansa's reply, "Conditional alliance." He swallowed dread, slid the parchment into his doublet. If they survived dawn, He would deliver Daenerys a needed thread of hope. If they did not, well, hope was for the living. The horizon reddened. Daenerys climbed Drogon's shoulder. Armor gleamed across her chest. Scaled plates forged from melted spears of Yunkai, embossed with the three-headed dragon. She wore no helm. Wind would be her shroud. Drogon flexed wings already humming with the sphere's inner fire. Rhaegal and Viserion lifted from the courtyard, talons scraping flagstones. Above, Garxian unfurled titanic pinions whose span eclipsed the rising sun. Stone fragments cascaded from his body as he shook off the last vestige of sleep. A hush swept the keep. Every breath paused, balanced between dawn and ruin. Daenerys' voice rang across ramparts. "Fly with me." Unsullied spears slammed shields. Dothraki howled. She pointed seaward, and Drogon leapt. Wind tore tears from her eyes even before heat boiled across her face. Drogon arrowed toward enemy sails, followed by Rhaegal's green flame and Viserion's pale roar. Behind them, the stone dragons rose, 3 mountains wading through air. Euron saw first the living dragons, grinning wide as madness. Then the sun hit Garxian's hide, and his grin faltered. "Fuck me," he hissed. Aboard his flagship, scorpions fired as one. Bolts screamed upward, deadly iron kisses trailing wildfire sparks. Drogon rolled, tucking wings, flame blasting downward to scatter burning bolts like matchsticks. One bolt clipped his flank. Molten veins beneath scales absorbed the wildfire, sizzling harmlessly. Rhaegal and Viserion dived on the outer ships, claws rending rigging, breaths turning masts to cinder. Then Garxian descended. Stone crashed into oak. The ship's deck split like bread under an axe. Sailors flew into waves amid splinters. Garxian's jaws, lined with obsidian teeth, clamped around a scorpion ballista, snapping wood and sinew as though salt bread. Fire unfurled from the Titan's throat, a white-hot torrent that flashed seawater to vapor, lifting the shattered hull into a column of steam before it sank in molten fragments. Panic raced along every deck. Some men dropped crossbows, diving into sea. Others froze, skewered by falling rigging. Euron himself seized a flaming harpoon and hurled it at Drogon as the great dragon swept overhead. The bolt missed by yards, but wildfire splattered Drogon's wing. They flared for an instant in ghostly green before subsiding under the sphere's glow. Euron swore, waving new bolts. "Load double. Aim for the stony fuck's eyes." Nay. But Thrailai's eyes glowed like molten quartz, and his gaze alone seared timber. He exhaled superheated dust that filled every crevice, igniting ropes, sailcloth, even steel buckles, white-hot. Men screamed until lungs cooked silent. On shore, Daenerys land forces waited. Tyrion watched through a battered spyglass as the enemy line collapsed under airborne fury. He mouthed a silent prayer that surrender penance would rise quickly. Yet Euron would not yield. He steered his flagship between wrecks, driving crew with curses and blades. 2 scorpions remained intact. He ordered them restrung with chain-tipped bolts, planning to snag a dragon and drag it seabound. His laughter cut across exploding waves. Daenerys saw him, a speck of arrogance amid flames. She veered Drogon into a steep climb, heat streaming behind. Above, Lilmirak circled, awaiting cue. Daenerys pointed. A silent order. The stone dragon folded wings and plummeted, not at Euron's ship, but into the sea beyond. Water erupted, tidal surge thrashing hulls. Waves lifted Euron's deck high, smashing scorpions against mast. Before crew could regain footing, the wave returned, sucking the ship toward the newborn whirlpool, as Lilmirax burst back into the air, seawater vaporizing off obsidian hide. Euron cursed, clinging to rail as deck pitched. Drogon dived, flames stoked white by Hearthstone. Euron raised a one-finger salute at the oncoming inferno. In that instant, a scorpion bolt from a nearby galley streaked upward, its tip sheathed in thicker wildfire glass than before. Daenerys saw it too late. Bolt met Drogon's chest, shattering scales, embedding deep just beneath the Hearthstone. A gout of green flame erupted upon impact, siphoning along veins. Drogon shrieked, wings faltering. Rage surged in Daenerys so fierce her vision bled red. She clutched Drogon tighter, whispering, "Stay with me." Heartstone veins flared crimson, fighting green plague. Drogon's muscles convulsed. Altitude dropped. Sea rushed upward. Garxian roared, beating titanic wings to intercept. He exhaled a blast of compressed heat at the gale catching Drogon's wings, turning air into an updraft that buoyed them, preventing impact. Rhaegal swooped beneath, lending lift with his own back. Drogon leveled, wobbling but aloft. The Heartstone's glow intensified, flushing out wildfire with scarlet pulses. The wound smoked but sealed. Daenerys' fury crystallized. She commanded Rhaegal and Viserion to protect Drogon as he recovered. Then she guided Garxian toward Euron's flagship. Stone Dragon and Queen moved as one thought. Silent, inevitable. Euron's face, smeared with ash and blood, twisted into manic delight. "Come then, bitch," he screamed, drawing a throwing axe. "Kiss the damn sea." Garxian's shadow swallowed the ship. Daenerys stood atop the Titan's head, hair whipping, eyes ablaze. She raised a hand, not to unleash fire, but to signal mercy. "Surrender." Her voice thundered over gale and flames. "Save your men." Euron spat salt, eyes blazing madness. "Men? Only reavers sail with me." He hurled the axe. Metal clanged off Garxian's brow, leaving a scratch smaller than a mouse. Euron laughed. Daenerys' hand fell. Garxian's jaw opened. The flame he released was not wildfire nor ordinary dragonfire. It was magma. Liquid stone drawn from the mountain, transmuted through heartstone resonance. The torrent engulfed the flagship, mid-hull. Wood and iron alike melted, decks sagged, masts liquefied into glowing lattice. Euron, framed in incandescent haze, kept laughing until his silhouette fused eternally to the ship's collapsing prow. An iron statue doomed to descend with the wreck. Silence followed, broken only by hiss of cooling rock. Remaining longships raised torn white cloths, dropping oars, men scrambling to extinguish burning rigging. The battle ended, not with cheers but with stunned hush. Both sides gazing upon an inferno statue, sinking beneath crimson waves. Daenerys wheeled Garxian above the surrendering fleet. She spoke, voice amplified by dragon's breath. "Lay down arms. Aid the wounded. Those who fight no more will live." Tan sails pivoted. Scabbards fell over rails. Fearful, yet alive, sailors obeyed. On Dragonstone's shore, Tyrion exhaled as though freed from iron bands. He signaled unsullied with a white pennant. "Send skiffs to rescue survivors." Daenerys guided her dragons landward. Drogon followed, flank scorched but mending. Heartstone pulsed steadier now, a second heartbeat echoing hers. Rhaegal and Viserion herded captured ships toward calmer tides, ensuring no sudden betrayal. The stone dragons perched along cliffs, eyes glowing down on battered fleets like carved judgment. Sun climbed higher, yet its warmth could not match the furnace in Daenerys' soul. She set foot on Dragonstone's beach, boots sinking into wet sand mixed with ash. Tyrion met her, face drawn. "Mercy," he said, half question. "As much as war allows," she replied, gaze distant. Euron refused parole. Hate chose fire. She touched Drogon's injured scale, expression pained yet resolute. "The others I will spare. Lord Tarley's men will see reason with their ships gone." She looked inland. "Cersei will feel this blow." Tyrion produced Sansa's letter then. "Perhaps not all the realm need suffer." He handed it up. "Winterfell offers alliance, if your dragons remain away from northern skies without leave." She unrolled the parchment, reading quickly. Relief flickered, tempered by caution. "A good step," she murmured. She looked at Tyrion, a tired half-smile. "Thank you for believing I could choose restraint." He bowed slightly. "Thank you for proving me right." Above them, clouds parted to reveal blue sky unmarred by smoke. For the moment at least, the wheel paused in its grinding. But on the scorched deck plates drifting seaward, wildfire still crackled beneath crusted stone. Down in the chambers beneath the mountain, heartstone veins coursed brighter, echoing conflict's pulse. And far across Westeros, Cersei Lannister stared into a goblet of arbor red, contemplating a final gamble. The vials of wildfire still secreted beneath King's Landing Street. In that fragile lull, children awoke in fishing villages to see dragons of stone perched like living citadels upon distant cliffs. Some wept. Some prayed. Some cheered. All knew the world had changed beyond any maester's ink. And Daenerys Targaryen, standing ankle-deep in blood-diluted surf, lifted her gaze to those stone giants and wondered whether, in forging new guardians, she had perhaps forged judges as well. For stone remembers every promise, and it weighs deeds in strata older than conscience. She turned inland to greet envoys. Heal wounded, plan terms. Mundane tasks that shape nations more surely than flame. But in her chest, twin hearts beat. One of blood, one of smoldering stone, and each kept a separate measure of mercy's cost. Gray rain clouds brooded above Blackwater Bay, but their bellies held no water, only a dull bruise of twilight light that gave the world a metallic sheen. Daenerys stood on Dragonstone's parapets damp with spray, watching skiffs shepherd broken masts toward shore. The truce pennants flapping limp in exhausted wind. Flames still guttered in the wreckage. Tongues of turquoise wildfire winked like dying stars where molten stone had cooled to glass. She could taste copper in the air, acrid, persistent. A lingering taint of Euron's last defiance. Below, Unsullied patrolled the strand between surrendered Ironborn and Dothraki outriders, who kept their mounts restless to discourage any stealthy blade. Rhaegal circled low, banking each pass so the downdraft pinned scattered swords against the tide-heavy sand. Prisoners shivered at the feel of scaly wind, a reminder that mercy remained conditional. In the inner yard, Tyrion organized field surgeons. Braziers flared as stretchers bore wounded of both sides beneath awnings of patched sailcloth. Missandei recorded names. Victor vanquished, status unknown, turning human ruin into careful columns of ink. Grey Worm allotted captured rowers to fire brigades that ferried buckets up zigzag stairs to shattered turrets still steaming from magma wash. Everywhere the castle seethed with controlled urgency, like an anthill cracked open yet determined to rebuild. Yet Daenerys felt a stillness pool within her, deeper and chillier than the sea. Battle's surge had dwindled, leaving a quiet so stark it amplified each creak of scorched timber drifting on tide. She rested a hand on Drogon's warm shoulder, where Heartstone still pulsed beneath semi-fused scales. Vines glowed dimmer now, stable, yet she sensed the gem's steady whisper. Strength awaiting will. Bootfalls clicked behind, Tyrion's shorter stride offset by Grey Worm's measured cadence. She turned as they halted, offering salutes of different worlds. The unsullied fist to chest, the dwarf's polite tilt of head. "The surrender holds," Tyrion reported, voice hoarse. 300-odd Ironborn and Crownlander sailors have taken parole. Lord Tarly's ground force camps, 2 leagues north of the Windwater Ford. Scouts confirm his vanguard stalled by news of the fleet's collapse. Would he march anyway? Daenerys asked. Grey Worm answered, unlikely. His supply wagons cannot ford without escort. Reports say half the Crownlander banners deserted upon hearing dragons made of stone walk. His tone suggested he found such desertions logical, perhaps even commendable. Daenerys exhaled. Send ravens to Lord Tarly. Offer terms identical to those we granted the fleet. Disarm, swear fealty, return unscathed. She glanced at the western horizon. Cersei will have word of her navy's ruin before nightfall. She may lash out. A chill pricked her. We cannot guard every city at once. Tyrion's eyes flicked up the towering forms of Garxian and Thraelis, now perched like monumental gargoyles along the ridge. We need not, he said softly. Their presence alone may paralyze her. Yet King's Landing hides wildfire enough to pen a pyre for the world. She might ignite streets in her own capital to spite you. Basta. Daenerys tightened her jaw. Then we reach her before spite turns to flame. She pivoted toward the stairs. Prepare the council at dusk. I will speak once the prisoners are quartered. Tyrion bowed. Grey Worm turned to carry orders. But as Daenerys made to descend, the dwarf touched her elbow. There is another matter, he said, eyes darting aside. A ship under Bravosi plain sails entered harbor behind the surrendered fleet. Flags of truce, no arms. Its master claims courier rights from the Iron Bank. He bears a sealed ledger and requests audience. Namaspand. Daenerys raised silver eyebrows. Tico Nestoris himself. Not this time. Tyrion's mouth twisted wryly. But the bank grows restless. They once backed Stannis Baratheon. Now they measure you. A sigh. They wish compensation for debts Cersei accrued, or promises that you will honor them. The queen's laugh was small, dry. Gold for dragons. How quaint. She gestured downslope. Send the envoy to me after council. No sooner. Let the bank wait atop its coin tower and quake at dragons of stone. Betu. As you command, Tyrion replied, half smiling. Evening dropped its veil purple as bruises. Lanterns blinked along ramparts like fireflies trapped in iron cages. Fragrant smoke of seasoned driftwood replaced sulfur stench. The council gathered in the carved stone map room. Tyrion, Missandei, Grey Worm, Sir Davos, Varys newly arrived by swift galley after chasing rumors at Gulltown, and 2 northern guests whose presence unsettled everyone. Lady Alis Karstark and her sworn shield, Helman Tallheart bearing Sansa's tree and direwolf seal. Daenerys entered last, cloak of black leather trimmed in red at the shoulders, hair braided with beads of lapis and dragonglass. She noted the stiffness of the northern envoys, faces wary of warmth from hearths they deemed southern. But they had traveled far with letters of tentative alliance tucked against hearts. For now, caution overshadowed hostility. She stood at the foot of the great table where House Targaryen once plotted conquest. Flicker of candlelight traced rivers on its carved surface. In that glow, confederates and strangers seemed equal parts conspirators and witnesses. We meet at a crossroads, she began. Cersei's fleet is gone, but her wildfire remains. Lord Tarly's host falters, yet other lords may rally. We can press hard, march the Roserad, siege the city, and force surrender by strength. Or we can open a door for peace while the realm still reels. Her gaze swept. I would know your counsel. Sir Davos spoke first, rough voice steady. Your Grace, I've lived through 4 sieges in King's Landing. Starve 'em too long and small folk riot. Sack it, and you'll be called butcher even if you spare more than your foes. Yet leave Cersei breathing in that throne room and you gamble on her next trick. He rubbed missing fingertips. I say blockade the bay, choke her lions, but give her swift terms. Step down, face trial. She refuses, we go in clean, strike the Red Keep, capture her, leave city mostly unscarred. Then, Varys folded slim hands. A succinct stratagem. Yet the little birds whisper that caches of wildfire line tunnels beyond the Sept's ruins, farther north near Flea Bottom. A single spark could blacken half the capital no matter how careful our thrust. His eyes like polished stones. The populace will obey only if they believe the Dragon Queen intends to shelter them from such doom. Which is why we must bring the stone dragons, Tyrion put in, voice tight. Let Garxion hang above the city like judgment writ in basalt. Display power so vast that even Cersei's arrogance quails. Compel capitulation before one torch meets alchemical fire. Lady Karstark cleared her throat. Her northern accent sharpened words like ice on iron. Forgive bluntness, your grace, but northerners recall the last Targaryen who let power overshadow caution. My Lady Sansa pledges support only if walls of King's Landing do not run red with innocent blood again. She asks proof, a vow enforced by those here assembled. She nodded at Davos and Varys. If the Queen of Dragons scorches no markets, no orphanages, the North will ride. Daenerys met the woman's direct stare. I vow. King's Landing will not burn by my hand, nor by claws of those who heed me. Flea Bottom will not endure what Meereen inflicted upon itself, nor what Astapor suffered in freedom's wake. She touched the map at the Red Keep. The tyrant alone must answer. Missandei said softly, and the tools of tyranny. Wildfire casks cannot remain. The Queen agreed. We will seize or neutralize them. She turned to Varys. You know the tunnels. Can your birds guide unsullied sappers beneath? Monsieur. Varys' nod was measured. Given a senite and proper sketches, they can mark each vault. But Cersei may ignite them the moment she suspects excavation. Then she must never suspect, Daenerys said, and looked to Tyrion. We require deception. Tyrion's mind raced behind restless eyes. Two fronts. A display of overwhelming force above. Dragons, sails, siege lines. While beneath, a whisper campaign. Rumors that you abandon war, that you treat with the Iron Bank for peace. Cersei will fixate on threats she can see, ignoring shadows at her feet. Oh, and if she sees through it, Grey Worm asked. Then we rely on speed, Tyrion answered. Unsullied dig at two pre-selected vaults. One beneath Street of Sisters, one beneath the Dragon Pit Hill. We collapse chambers into sunken pools, flooding wildfire with seawater diverted from old storm drains. Even if half explodes, water robs it of fury. Daenerys considered. Make it so. She turned to Lady Karstark. Carry my renewed oath north. Tell Lady Sansa, crimes of fire will not stain my reign. When the time comes, I ask the North to seal the neck, to prevent Lannister mercenaries fleeing to foreign ports. The envoy nodded, satisfaction restrained. Dusk's purple bled to star-speckled indigo. When council concluded, most drifted to tasks. Daenerys remained, hands braced on carved continents. Tyrion lingered. You disavow fire, yet keep magma in your dragon's chest, he said, voice gentle. Is your promise to the North a chain or wings? Both, she replied. A chain for wrath, wings for justice. She drew a breath. I learned in Meereen. Rule with mercy, and they call you weak. Rule with fear, and they call you monster. Perhaps I will be both until they learn a third word. He offered a sad smile. May that word be queen. 2 days later, a sea fog curled off Blackwater like a living thing. From above, Daenerys saw it blanket shoals around the gullet, hiding islands as though the world ended at a wall of mill. River barges stalled mid-channel, fearful of sudden reefs. It was perfect cover. Dawn still slept when the unsullied vanguard reached Mudgate in disguised dories, gray cloaks masking spears. No bells tolled. Watchmen saw only fishermen gliding through fog. On the eastern shore, Tyrion's hired Kuhoric smiths assembled scorpions along a floating pontoon bridge, but with bolts tipped not in steel, but weighted grapnels to haul casks from water once sabotage was done. Within the city, rats scurried, sensing upheaval. Varys' little birds perched in rafters waited. At prearranged knocks, they opened hidden doors for Grey Worm's strike teams, guiding them into labyrinthine warrens older than Aegon's conquest. Down there, walls dripped brine and spider moss. Stench of rotten kelp warred with bite of stale wildfire trapped in lead-lined barrels. Grey Worm crouched by a riveted cylinder taller than a man. The volatile resin within sloshed like thick soup. He signaled sappers, slim men carrying breaching saws and copper pipes. While one drilled a fist-width hole into brickwork of the tunnel floor, another threaded canvas hose to a distant sluice that connected through collapsed docks to the river. They worked silent. Each tap of chisel sounded a thunderclap in their minds. Sweat beaded, not from heat but knowledge. One spark would incinerate lungs before screams. Above, King's Landing stirred to usual haggard life. Fishwives shouting, carts grinding, gold cloaks drowsy at posts. But something felt off. Pigeons burst from roofs too early. Dogs whined under stoops. An old hedge knight, on the street of Flower, paused mid-chew of a honey cake. Squinting as if at thunder he alone heard. In the Red Keep, Cersei Lannister paced the length of Maegor's holdfast chamber. She wore sable velvet. A gorget of golden lions framed her pale throat. Jaime, clad in burnished plate, observed quietly. Qyburn presented black powder sketches of new scorpions, speaking of winch ratios. She listened yet hardly heard. Her thoughts diverged between vengeance and dread. A runner arrived breathless. Lord Tarley had withdrawn to Bitterbridge, leaving Crownland's roads unguarded. Rage leapt. She hurled a jeweled goblet that clanged off a pillar. "Traitor!" she hissed. "All men are soft until fire scalds them." Qyburn bowed. "Might I suggest unveiling the final device?" He signaled to Sir Gregor, who lumbered forward, carrying a small iron-bound chest. When opened, inside lay crystal phials of wildfire, each fitted with pressure-sensitive stopper. Cersei's eyes gleamed. "With a dozen of these," Qyburn whispered, "we could sling terror into the enemy encampment before they raise tents. They burst on impact. Dragons or men, all burn alike." Jaime's face widened. "Sling wildfire inside the walls? The wind could turn." "Then we choose calm nights," Cersei snapped. "And we sling far." She traced a finger along green glass. "Let Daenerys parade her stone dragons. She cannot guard every tent." Satisfaction thawed her fevered dread. "Have the trebuchets prepared at once." Jaime's protest died at her stare. He turned on heel. Yet doubt gnawed. Each step of resistance tightened noose around small folk who would die first for his sister's pride. Memory of Tyrion's warning, "The city will rise against tyrants again," flickered. Outside, the city fog thinned toward afternoon, revealing a spectacle the capital had never imagined. 3 stone dragons perched on the ridge above Rhaenys Hill. Garxian's wings formed a dark arch against sunlit haze, shadow stretching across the domes of Fleabottom. Thraelis hovered on thermals over the dragon pit ruins, massive form refracting light like stained glass. Lumirax clutched the treacherous slopes of Visenya's Hill, neck craned toward the keep, eyes glowing windows of living flame. Their arrival, conducted just past dawn through low coastal currents, had drawn no horns. They simply emerged from mist like mountains that had chosen new coordinates. Panic rippled slow, then exploded. Bakers dropped trays, septas fainted, beggars knelt weeping. But when no fiery breath descended in minutes that followed, awe tempered fear into stunned hush. Children pointed, mouths round. A silence like prayer settled citywide, punctuated only by distant gulls. Daenerys soared in that hush astride Drogon, who had recovered fully, save a pale scar where bolts struck. The mark now ringed by heartstone veins pulsing gentle crimson. Rhaegal and Viserion flanked him. She wore dark riding leathers, sword Lightbringer, once a gift from Qarth Warlock, now reforged by Volantine smelters, sheened at her hip. As she guided the aerial wedge above King's Landing, she studied the maze, pale red roofs of the Red Keep, grand boulevard stretching from Gate of the Gods, squat shape of Maegor's Holdfast. Memory flashed, Mad King's pyromancer piles hidden along these same streets decades past. She breathed, steady. Trumpets wailed from battlements as gold cloaks scrambled. Scorpions atop towers traversed. Crews perspired at seeing arrows pointed at beasts bigger than Ballistae themselves. But no order to fire came. Cersei had commanded hold until dragons made the first strike. She would show the realm who was aggressor. Daenerys made certain none would doubt. She lifted high above Bastion Hill. Then Drogon unleashed a roar that rang like iron struck on anvil. The roar, not flame, was weapon. A call heard in every garret, cellar, cobbled lane. In its echo, Varys' birds whispered, "Do not flee. The Dragon Queen protects." From balconies, some dared wave white cloths. Word traveled street to street. The Queen demands the surrender of the Lion. In the tunnels, Grey Worm felt stone vibrate with Drogon's roar. Signal enough. Operation near complete. Seawater roared down copper pipes, sloshing round the base of casks. Salty brine hissed at wildfire resin. Steam billowed, but volatile liquid chilled. Teams hammered cork wedges, sealing hoses. One barrel ruptured from thermal shock. Green flame whooshed, but low tide flooding smothered it before it spread. Grey Worm blinked soot from lashes, pressed on. Minutes later, first chamber was drowned. Wildfire floated harmless as oil on water's surface, parted only by bubbles. He moved to second vault. Here, slime-coated bricks, decades-old rat bones crunched under sandals. They repeated process, prayerless, breathing measured. When at last water rose to their waists, mission done, Grey Worm sent a bird upward through ventilation shaft. A white dove smeared chalk upon wings, A boy in a rooftop rookery caught it, freed colored ribbon, blue for safe. High above, Rhaegal saw fluttering ribbon and keened. Daenerys felt the note vibrate saddle. She smiled. First relief of day. 2 vaults neutralized, dozens of casks inert. Enough to spare half the city if worst came. Still, more caches remained under Sept Market. Under Guildhall of Alchemists. They would take days. Her mental tally broke at hail of arrows clattering from Sir Osmond Kettleblack's personal guard. Splinters pinged useless off Drogon's scales, but at least one shaft arced toward a child perched on a spice market awning. Instinct surged. She dove, wings sending concussion, that flung archers back and flattened awning so child slid harmless to stall roof. She banked away without blood spilled. Crowds saw protective gesture. Murmur of awe grew. Inside Red Keep's strategy court, Cersei watched from a slit window. Fury boiled. She plays protector to my people. She turned on Qyburn. Ready trebuchets. Tonight they burn. Miles off south coast, blockading fleet commanded by Dario Naharis. Now a prince of cell sails, anchored in Horseshoe Harbor off Duskendale. His storm crows patrolled against reinforcement convoys. He studied distant black sails of Myrish sellswards, yet undecided which side to rent swords. Coin might buy them, but dragons wrote surer contracts. Dario smiled at thought of returning to his queen's side in final triumph. But storms breed in quiet coves. In Volantis, red priests preached Daenerys reborn as Azor Ahai returned. In Lys, magisters whispered of obsidian titans and reconsidered slave contracts. In Bravos, Iron Bank's ledger keepers scratched quills, debating risk in lines of credit to a Lion Queen besieged. And far north beyond the wall, where spring snows receded to reveal barren scars of war. Something cold and ancient stirred at faintest scent of stone dragons. Fire awakening stone might awaken ice as well. Night fell like ink poured from broken jug. Torches ringed King's Landing in trembling halos. Daenerys withdrew her flight to Hilltop Camp east of Roserad, out of Scorpion range, yet visible to city ramparts. She pitched no tent, choosing open air beside Drogon's flank. Nearby Garxian crouched fallen statue still. Eyes dim embers. Fires burned in trenches. Kaluk horns of Dothraki, low Diat. Tyrion found her seated on a crate, reviewing Varys' latest map of remaining wildfire caches. The sappers made headway, he said. Third vault under Alchemist's Guild has partial flood. No sign Cersei noticed. The city noticed, Daenerys replied. They cheered when we landed the wounded from both fleets. They cheered even Ironborn spared. She rolled shoulders weary. But if Cersei hurls wildfire tomorrow, cheers turn to curses. Tyrion hesitated. There may be another route. He produced slim scroll sealed with wax bearing tree and lion conjoined crest. A raven arrived from Winterfell moments ago, intercepted by Lady Karstark at the lines. It is from Jaime. He extended the scroll. Daenerys unfolded, scanned cramped script by Moon Lantern Tariyat. Jaime offered terms. He would open a postern gate at Maegor's Holdfast before dawn, slip Daenerys' vanguard inside to seize Cersei before trebuchets unleash. In return, he asked safe conduct for infant son, rumored to be Cersei's, though court believed it Jaime's. He names the child Tommen, after lost king. Daenerys murmured, surprise softening face. He seeks exile, not throne. Tyrion's voice cracked. My brother's last bid to save what spark of honor remains. He swallowed. If we strike from within, city spares the siege. Wildfire remains locked. Daenerys considered weighty minutes. It may be trap. All war is trap, Tyrion said. Yet Jaime understands Cersei's madness better than any. He has killed a king once to spare thousands. Perhaps he would trade queens now for the same cause. She folded letter. We try. She stood, cloak snapping. Grey Worm will lead 50 unsullied through the postern. I shall follow with Drogon above the inner wards. Rhaegal and Viserion guard riverside. Stone dragons stay beyond walls. Their weight may collapse tunnels. Tyrion smiled faintly through tears. He wiped as though from wind. Then dawn decides. Dawn whispered gray-pink. Mist clung to the city's east walls. At a sally port half concealed by ivy on Mager's holdfast's base, Jamie awaited. He wore plain mail, no surcoat. Torch in hand, shielded by cloak. He signaled thrice. From haze, Grey Worm appeared, spear ready. Behind, 50 unsullied moved, silent as punctured breath. Jamie's eyes flicked to sigils absent on their shields. No dragons, just dull bronze. This way, he murmured. They slipped into corridor lit by guttering lamps. Stone groaned overhead, ancient weight of red walls. Jamie led down service stairs once used by scullery maids. 2 turns, one upward ramp, another corridor, and they emerged behind throne room dais, where crimson drapes hid a postern from public view. Outside heavy doors, Cersei's Queen's Guard convened, armored in black enameled plates. Jamie pressed finger to lips, gestured to secret slit in drapes offering vantage of hall. Cersei sat on iron throne surrounded by lanterns, conversing with Qyburn and high captains. Sir Gregor loomed at right hand like silent apocalypse. Jamie whispered, "Unsullied can seize dais while I distract mountain. Cersei may yield to you or she may die." He halted, throat tight. "If possible, let me speak first." Grey Worm nodded curt. "When captain thrusts, spear finds heart." Jamie grimaced. A poet among warriors. He looked to the Spear brothers behind. Ready? But destiny rarely waits. Doors at far end banged open. Sir Bronn of the Blackwater strode in. Sword tip, trailing sparks. "Army at gates refuses parleys," he announced. "Siga towers, wheel up Rosa Road. Dragons circle." He eyed Cersei wary. "Your move." Cersei rose, wildfire file in palm like oversized emerald. "Then we answer." She raised arm. Guards tensed. Jamie cursed, shoved through drapes into hall before plan unsheathed. "Sister," he called, voice echoing. "Hear reason." Cersei's eyes locked on him, suspicion immediate. "Where were you?" she snapped. "Hiding beneath stones like traitor father." "I have come to stop this," he said, stepping closer. "Call off trebuchets. Surrender. Save our son." Her face contorted. "Save my son? You would trade him to dragon whore for your life." She waved mountain forward. "Kill the traitor." But before Sir Gregor moved, a crash thundered. Unsullied spilled through draperies, spears bristling. Sir Gregor swung, cleaving 2 at thrust. Gray short spears flexed, death silent. Chaos erupted. Captains drew steel, Bronn cursed and ducked behind pillar. Jamie dashed toward Cersei, shouting, "Stand down!" Cersei shrieked, flinging file. It shattered on marble near onrushing Unsullied. Green flames surged. Grey Worm vaulted back, ordering ranks split. Fire licked iron, but discipline held. Cersei reached into chest for second file, but Jamie grabbed her wrist. Wildfire kissed his sleeve, fabric smoldered. He twisted, forcing glass from her hand. It rolled, smoking, toward dais edge. Cersei slapped him, nails raking cheek. Gregor advanced. Sword raised to cleave both siblings, rather than calculate. Before blade fell, ceiling exploded. Marble slab shattered as Drogon's talons punched through, rubble cascading. The dragon's head jutted into throne room, maw glowing molten dite. Gasps turned screams as nobles fled. Cersei froze, terror draining defiance. Jamie hauled her behind throne as flames spewed above, incinerating chandeliers, scattering molten iron droplets that hissed across floor. Drogon did not torch ground. His flame carved a fiery arch high overhead, demonstration rather than slaughter. A warning. From hold descended Daenerys on rope harness, boots crunching embers. She strode across marble, cracked by heat, eyes fixed on Lannister Queen. Unsullied ringed hall. Sir Gregor still stood, but spear points bristling at each joint. Gregor swung once. Spears punctured mail. He staggered, surprised. Magma-lit eyes behind visor dulled. Knees buckled. The Unsullied retreated as gargantuan corpse toppled with crash. Daenerys halted steps from Cersei, who clung to throne like child to mother's skirts. Voice calm, she said, "The city bows. Your reign ends. Surrender. Stand trial. For your sake, and for those who yet live beyond these walls." Cersei's lip curled, but fear wore cunning. She saw wildfire file unbroken near dais. Slowly her hand slid behind gown slit where a thin stiletto hid. Jaime noticed, shook head slight. Cersei's eyes softened a breath, then hardened. She lunged for file. Jaime grabbed her waist. They wrestled. Glass rolled. Daenerys' eyes widened. Jaime whispered, "Do not." Cersei hissed, "For our son." She elbowed him, fingers brushing glass. In that second, Drogon roared, the tremor jolted hand away. Wildfire file teetered, dropped stare, cracked but did not burst. Cersei screamed rage, pushed Jaime aside, snatched stiletto, lunged at Daenerys. Blade flashed. Daenerys sidestepped, seized Cersei's wrist, twisted. Knife clanged. Grey Worm advanced, but she signaled hold. "Enough," Daenerys said. Cersei spat blood from bitten lip. "Kill me then, Queen of Ashes." Bitter laugh. "You think mercy spares you that name? The realm already fears you more than me." "Not fear, change," Daenerys replied softly. "Fear dies faster than hope." She looked to Jaime. "Take her into custody. She shall stand trial in Dragonstone under lords chosen from every region. Let realm judge." Jaime's shoulders sagged. Relief tears mingled with soot on cheeks. He clasped Cersei's arms. "It's over," she sagged. Hate drained a hollow grief. But tragedy has echoes. Qyburn, scuttling near rubble, found cracked wildfire file, eyes shining greed. As Unsullied cuffed him, file slipped from sleeve and shattered fully. Green flame erupted column tall, licking tapestries, chewing air. Casks hidden behind throne ignited. Shockwave blasted dais, toppled iron monstrosity. Fire chased oxygen, roaring toward hole Drogon had carved. Found none. Pressure forced expansion sideways. Daenerys flung Cersei and Jaime behind fallen throne, dove over them. Grey Worm shouted retreat. Drogon sensed explosion. Jerked head out, dragging wind that sucked flames upward. Blast boomed through roof, vented skyward, leaving throne room blanketed in searing gust, but sparing floors. Still, smoke choked lungs. Cersei coughed against Jaime's chest, eyes wide at narrow escape. Daenerys rose, hair singed at tips. "Take them," she rasped. Unsullied hoisted Cersei and Qyburn. Jaime offered wrists meekly. Grey Worm shook head. The Kingslayer's choice had saved lives. He was guest not prisoner, for now. Outside, bells of Great Sept, long replaced by makeshift belfry after its destruction, began to toll surrender, first in tentative clangs, then resounding as captain after captain lowered banners. Crowds in alleys paused, listening. Stone dragons perched above answered with low trumpet roars. Not menace but finale. Day's sun crested, washing city in pale gold. On ramparts, gold cloaks stacked arms. Dothraki rode through gates, but sheathed arrax, curiosity bright in savage eyes. Unsullied flag unfurled. Red three-headed dragons surrounded by ring of 7 white stars. Daenerys' new sigil symbolizing unity of kingdoms. Daenerys emerged onto landing terrace with prisoners flanked. Drogon crouched overhead. She spoke to mass spectators gathered in square once scarred by sept blast. Her voice carried amplified by hollow of demolished buildings. People of King's Landing, the war for the throne is finished. The tyrant is fallen. I promise no more fires, no more chains. Your houses, your trades, your lives are your own. Those who served Lannister crown are not enemy, only cruelty is. We begin again, together. Dow. Silence lingered, stunned. Then a woman raised fist, crying, "Dragon Queen!" Others followed, cheers ragged, unsure. Children waved scrap cloths. Bells changed tone from dread to celebration rung by brave novices. High above, Garxian lifted neck, exhaled a plume of harmless steam that shimmered rainbow in sunlight. Wonder rippled. Cheers grew. Daenerys felt tears well unbidden. She pressed hand to breastplate, bowed head. In that bow, she felt weight of thousands of dead across continents. Their ghosts whispered both judgment and blessing. By twilight, the Red Keep's tallest tower flew Targaryen star banner. Guards posted at vaults where wildfire lay inert. Alchemists bound in cords forced to reveal maps of final caches. Grey Worm sappers would drain them within days. In a solar hastily cleared of shattered glass, Daenerys convened lords present. Tyrion now reinstated as Hand, Davos master of ships, Missandei keeper of records, Lady Karstark representing North. Gendry Baratheon called from Dragonstone's fleet to speak for Stormlands, and surprisingly Samwell Tarly arrived with brothers of the Citadel to witness surrender of his father's quills rather than swords. Jaime sat under gentle guard, visage hollow but resolute. Agenda: trial date for Cersei and Qyburn. Reparations to rebuild burned districts. New small council seats offered to each great house, including seats reserved for common guild representatives. Sam raised proposal for city granaries to open stores to displaced. Daenerys agreed immediate. Lady Karstark offered surplus northern wheat carriage. Gendry pledged smith forges to craft new sewer grates. Hope began. That night, Daenerys climbed remains of Tower of the Hand. Overlooked city lights flickering like stars fallen upon earth. Tyrion joined, silent for long spell. "What do you see?" she asked at last. He sipped wine. "A tapestry frayed yet salvageable." He smiled rueful. "And a wheel. One you may truly break, given time." She turned. "Will they let me? They meaning nobles, or ghosts of past?" He shrugged. "Both love power, but you have dragons of stone and of choice. Teach them fear of tyranny above fear of changemakers. They will follow." He raised cup. "Two choices then." She clinked without tasting. "Tomorrow begins reckoning. Trials, titles, and far north, deeper winters." She thought of Bran's warning voice, "Dead never rest." But for one breath, we hold peace. Wind shifted, carrying scent of fire-quenched streets mixed with fresh-baked loaves as reopened bakeries served free bread. Bells chimed still, gentler now, as though to lull city. Drogon glided overhead, Hearthstone shimmering soft. On distant hills, Garxian and his siblings settled like triune guardians of dawn. Daenerys closed eyes, listening. Beneath clang of anvils, murmur of river, rustle of banners, she sensed deeper pulse. The heartbeat of the realm itself. Cautious, hopeful, beginning slow mend. She breathed in sync, letting those beats anchor purpose stronger than any throne's cold metal. In whispered Valyrian she promised night sky, "I will deserve this chance. Stone will learn mercy. Fire will learn patience. And the world will learn a new song." Stars above Dragonstone, now King's Landing, glimmered answer bright yet distant, like unhatched futures waiting warm.